Nagano Prefecture in Japan is a scenic beauty, home to 9 of the 12 highest mountains in the country. The peaks and valleys offer spectacular alpine wilderness and national parks. Lake Kizaki, at the base of the Japanese Alps, attracts visitors to its shores to take advantage of the water sports on offer, and in the winter, skiers take to the mountains. The Japanese black bears, a subspecies of the Asian black bears, is found on Japan's 2 main islands and is thought to number around 10,000 in the whole of the country. But not all bears in Japan are wild, and not all are afforded the luxury of Japan's great mountains, ranges, and alpine meadows. 75-year-old Akira Maruyama lived with his wife down a long, narrow mountain road. His old, detached house was situated about an hour from Matsumoto City, where his daughter and her family lived. Akira didn't have many neighbors, but that suited him. He loved the outdoors and the quietness of his neighborhood. He hadn't long retired and was enjoying the slower pace of life that life in the countryside allowed for. In his younger days, he had been a hunter, but it never sat right with him, taking the life of another for the thrill of the hunt. So he laid down his gun and turned his hand to working at ironworks and civil engineering sites near Matsumoto. He was a kind-hearted man who loved animals. He could even touch wild deer if he sat still long enough behind the back of his house. He was patient and devoted to animals. He had since retired and grew rice and vegetables in his fields, living the good life and enjoying his freedom. He was still very much active in his neighborhood, regularly picking up trash and volunteering for local associations. But he shared his retired life with another individual, a bear. To those who didn't know the full story, the bear appeared to be confined to a small metal cage. The bars were rusted, the concrete slabs on the floor cracked, cold and dirty, and the tin roof flimsy. But those were just where the bear slept. Akira and his pet bear had formed a tight bond together. He considered the 20-year-old male Japanese black bear as part of the family and treated him as such. In fact, he had rescued him. The tiny bundle of fluff had been discovered on a road construction site 10 kilometers from where Akira lived. He had heard about the discovery through his civil engineering colleagues and visited the site to take a look for himself. Sure enough, the next day, the bear was still there. He must have only been a few weeks old. At about the size of a domestic house cat, the bear could barely move. The mother hadn't come back for it, and so it was either abandoned or had become separated and lost from his family. Akira knew the bear wouldn't survive much longer on its own, and so he took it in. He spent many painstaking hours trying to nurse it back to health. He fed it endless bottles of warm milk, and each time the bear would suckle, it would make a distinctive Pepe noise, and so Akira named him Pepe. When the cub regained his strength, Akira's grandchildren would come over and visit. They would wrestle with the small bear cub, rolling over and over on the grass. They could pick him up and cuddle him or chase each other around the garden. He quickly became part of the family, and Akira built the shed for him in the back garden. Although Pepe slept in there, he regularly wandered the garden and responded to the family's commands and calls. But he was growing up fast, and it wasn't long before he was mature. Akira knew he wouldn't survive in the wild, and so he applied for a license to keep it. He was granted permission, and soon people traveled from all over to see Akira and his pet bear. Children would knock on Akira's door and ask to see the bear. Their faces lit up when they saw the friendly, bumbling animal eating treats from Akira's hand or enjoying a back rub through the metal bars on his cage. Akira and Pepe's interactions were famous amongst locals. Akira fed him fruits, vegetables, and nuts, and Pepe gobbled them down gratefully. In the wild, the bears are mostly herbivorous, eating herbs and grasses in the spring before switching to berries and nuts later in the year to stock up before winter. They also consume meat and have been known to prey on wild antelope, deer, and boar. Japanese black bears are typically smaller than other species. The males grow to around 120 to 140 centimeters, 47 to 55 inches long, and weigh 60 to 120 kilograms, or 130 to 260 pounds. Despite being smaller in stature to other bears, Pepe was still incredibly strong. One day, he accidentally bit Akira's finger when he was feeding him, and Akira never made the same mistake again. From then on, he always wore leather gloves when feeding Pepe. 20 years passed with Pepe just as devoted to Akira as Akira was to him. But Akira, who had been a physically fit man all his life, was beginning to deteriorate. He had significant trouble with his lungs. He had retired from work, but was unable to fully enjoy his retirement due to his failing breathing. He carried an oxygen canister around with him wherever he went and was hooked up to it to help with his breathing. He could feel himself fading and told his family he didn't think he had long left. He wasn't the same man he used to be, but he continued to look after Pepe as he had always done. He was like a son to him. On the morning of November 28, 2022, however, something happened to Akira that cannot be fully explained. His daughter came to collect his wife to take her for a hospital appointment when she found Akira slumped on the ground of Pepe's cage. She raced outside and knelt by his side. He had a faint pulse and his breathing was shallow. He was unresponsive. Pepe sat munching some gingo nuts from a bucket left outside the cage. The door was open and Pepe showed no signs of aggression, but Akira was covered in blood. It pooled down the concrete slab all around him. Cuts, scratches, and bite marks covered his body. His daughter immediately called emergency services and Akira was raced to hospital. Sadly, he died a short while later. But what had happened? Had his trusted companion turned on him after 20 years together? Or was Pepe trying to play with Akira? As winter was approaching, Pepe may have been ravenous, stocking up on food to build fat reserves for the cold months ahead. He had devoured almost the entire bucket of nuts Akira had brought out for him. Maybe he had become overexcited when he smelt the food and had lunged at Akira. Even though he was only 1 meter long and weighed 80 kilograms, Pepe would have easily floored Akira, especially with his failing health. He was no match for the bear, and each and every bite was a devastating blow for the devoted owner. He could feel the power behind the strikes, the sharp sensation of Pepe's teeth biting into his flesh, and the slashes of the long claws. Perhaps Pepe had been over-playful with Akira and had jumped at him. He had been used to wrestling with the family over the years and could be boisterous. But as Akira lost his strength over the recent years, he was no longer able to play with Pepe as he once did. Later, a member from the local hunting club came and shot the bear. Akira's family was devastated on both counts. They had lost Akira, a devoted father, husband, and grandfather who was looking forward to retirement and spending time with his growing family. And they had lost Akira's longtime companion, the unique and playful Pepe, whom they had all known since he was a few weeks old. Akira's family didn't hold a grudge against Pepe. They knew he was very strong and that he may have playfully knocked Akira around. He didn't know his own strength, and they treated the death as an accident. They used a digger to dig a large hole for Pepe in the backyard. When news of the tragedy spread, neighbors came to pay their respects. They lit incense and lay flowers and apples on top of the upturned soil, a sign of respect for Pepe, a local celebrity who, just like Akira, met his terrifying final affliction.